There comes a moment in a man's life when he finally understands something brutal. People don't see you as you are. They see you as you appear to be. And the ones who shape that appearance rule the room. Most men never learn this. They speak too fast, reveal too much, defend every accusation, and bleed their intentions into the air. They think clarity earns respect, that transparency is noble, that honesty will protect them. But the world is not a temple. It is a theater, and the ones who understand this script their own legend. Because perception is not truth. Perception is leverage. Perception is armor. Perception is a weapon. The smartest men do not fight for power head-on. They reshape how others see them, quietly, subtly, deliberately, until resistance becomes unnecessary. When you control perception, you don't force respect. You become the kind of man people hesitate to question. Power is not in your hands. It sits in their minds. Every kingdom begins in silence, not with a scream, not with a declaration, but with a man who knows how to let the world imagine him. Because imagination is more powerful than information. A rumor shapes faster than a fact. A quiet man becomes more feared than a loud one. And a presence that speaks little becomes a presence people study. There is no force more underestimated than a man who knows how to control what others believe. The truth is simple. You don't win by being real. You win by shaping what feels real to others. Power begins where explanation ends. The law is this: control perception, not reality. Reality is heavy, slow, and full of resistance. Perception is fluid, fast, and easily seduced. Human beings don't interact with facts. They interact with symbols, with impressions, with hints and shadows, and the unspoken spaces between your words. The strongest men move their world not by force, but by manipulating the angles through which others look at them. Machiavelli understood this. To command, you must appear capable. To intimidate, you must appear unshaken. To lead, you must appear inevitable. Notice the word appear. Perception is power in disguise, and disguise is the purest strategy. Power games in modern life are subtle, but they are everywhere. In meetings, the man who speaks last is seen as decisive, even if he says nothing new. In relationships, the one who stays emotionally still becomes the center of gravity. In social circles, the person who reveals the least becomes the most interesting. This is how smart men operate, through the illusion of depth, stability, and mystery. Not by proving themselves, but by controlling the lens through which others observe them. Consider the man who never rushes his words. His calmness creates an illusion. He must be confident. He must be thinking deeply. He must know something others don't know. In reality, maybe he doesn't sit. But perception assigns him strength. Or the man who never over-explains himself. People assume he sits secure, certain, unshaken. He gives them no emotional blueprint to decode. His silence becomes a fortress. Meanwhile, the weak do the opposite. They ramble. They justify. They try to clarify every misunderstanding. They drown in the noise they create. Weak men fight to be understood. Strong men let misunderstanding work in their favor, because confusion can be a form of control. Consider the leader who maintains emotional neutrality. He never shows irritation, never raises his voice, never reacts. People fill the void by projecting strength onto him. They assume he's unbreakable simply because he refuses to give them evidence otherwise. This is how perception is shaped, not by what you are, but by what others invent about you. Sun Tzu hinted at this. The wise appear simple. The simple appear wise. The invisible wins the battle. The strongest men live in that paradox. They act simply but appear complex. They reveal little but seem profound. They avoid drama but attract attention. They walk slowly but seem unstoppable. Perception bends reality. And the ones who know this never argue for their image. They engineer it. Look at relationships. The partner who remains composed during conflict automatically seizes the psychological high ground. Not because they're better, but because emotions create vulnerability while stillness creates dominance. Look at workplaces. The employee who never appears desperate for approval becomes the one everyone seeks approval from. Detachment becomes authority. Look at social dynamics. People admire and fear what they cannot completely read. Mystery forces respect. The weak want to be understood. The strong want to be misinterpreted in their favor. In every domain, business, love, friendships, the pattern holds. The man who manages perception quietly wins battles others never see. Because perception determines expectation. Expectation shapes behavior, and behavior becomes submission. Control perception, and the world rearranges itself around you. Most men never understand the violence hidden inside silence. They treat silence as emptiness, as weakness, as something that needs to be filled. They rush to speak, thinking speed equals intelligence and noise equals authority. But the truth is colder than that. Silence is not absence. Silence is pressure. It is weight. It is a force that bends the minds of those who stand in front of it. When you let silence speak before your mouth does, you let the other person reveal their intentions, their insecurities, and their hunger long before you reveal yours. A man who speaks too early exposes his position. A man who answers instantly exposes his need. A man who fills every gap in conversation exposes his fear of being misunderstood. Silence unmasks all of them, and you don't have to lift a finger. When you withhold your voice, people begin negotiating with your stillness instead of your words. They adjust themselves. They rethink their approach. They become careful. Even the ones who pretend to be bold instinctively lower their intensity in front of a man who does not react. Silence forces them to wonder what you're thinking, and wondering is the birthplace of fear. You must understand how the human mind works in moments of uncertainty. Most people cannot tolerate ambiguity. If a silence stretches even for a few seconds, their anxiety fills it with assumptions, and assumptions are rarely favorable. They start believing you know more than you do. They assume you're analyzing them, judging them, evaluating them. They assume you're confident enough not to rush, strong enough not to defend yourself, disciplined enough not to spill your thoughts like loose coins on a table. The weaker the person, the faster they try to end the silence. And the more desperate they are to end it, the more control you gain without speaking a single word. There's a reason interrogators use silence more than threats. A calm face and a closed mouth can break a guilty man faster than shouting. The same principle applies in daily life. People fear what they cannot read. Silence is unreadable. It hides your motives, your emotional state, your strategy. When you stay silent long enough, others begin revealing themselves just to fill the discomfort. They admit things they didn't need to admit. They explain things you didn't ask for. They open doors that would have stayed locked had you spoken too soon. If you want a simple example, look at negotiation rooms. The person who speaks first loses, not because their offer is bad, but because they show their hand. The man who remains silent forces the others to guess his price, adjust their offer, soften their stance. He lets their imagination create leverage for him. People negotiate against themselves when you give them silence. Now look at relationships. Silence in conflict is not stonewalling. It is a position of strength when used correctly. If someone tries to provoke you and you respond immediately, you hand over your emotions like a weapon. But if you let silence settle, if you simply breathe and watch, their performance collapses, their anger deflates, their manipulation loses shape. They start searching your face for signs of weakness, and when they find none, they begin doubting their own position. Silence shifts the emotional balance without a single word being spoken. Even socially, silence builds mystique. Everyone today is loud, impulsive, constantly explaining themselves. But the quiet man becomes an anomaly. People stare a little longer. They interpret every small gesture as meaningful. They imagine depth because they cannot see the bottom. They respect what they cannot easily access. Silence elevates your presence because it forces others to project their own stories onto you, stories that are often more flattering than the truth. But silence is not passive. It must be controlled, intentional, weaponized. The wrong kind of silence is avoidance. The right kind is dominance. You aren't withdrawing, you're observing. You aren't afraid to speak. You're waiting for the moment where speaking has maximum impact. You're letting others spend their energy first. You're letting their character reveal itself. You're letting their assumptions trap them. The most dangerous man in the room is not the loud one. It is the one who watches without urgency, listens without reacting, and speaks only when every word lands like a blade. Silence is not just the absence of speech. It is the creation of tension, and tension is the birthplace of authority. When silence speaks before your mouth does, your voice carries twice the power. When you finally decide to use it, it becomes measured, deliberate, weighted. Others lean in when you begin. They brace themselves. They listen because they've already felt the presence you established without sound. A man who can remain silent is a man who cannot be rushed, baited, manipulated, or exposed. And that is why silence, true controlled silence, is the first language of power. Most people chase truth as if truth is what grants them power. They think if they are honest, transparent, and clear, the world will treat them fairly. But smart men know this is a childish illusion. The world doesn't reward truth. It rewards whatever appears true. This is why weak men cling to honesty, while strong men learn to control perception. Because perception can be sculpted, bent, guided, weaponized. Truth cannot. Controlling perception is not about lying. Lies are fragile, easily exposed, and require maintenance. Controlling perception is about guiding what people focus on, what they ignore, and what they assume. You make them believe things without ever stating them. You let them draw their own conclusions while your hands remain clean. That is real influence. It is the power of suggestion, not the power of explanation. Think about how people judge each other. They don't examine facts. They observe fragments, tone, posture, timing, certainty, restraint. They judge confidence by stillness, intelligence by brevity, strength by emotional control. None of these things prove anything, yet they shape perception instantly. People believe the image, not the essence. If you understand this, you can shape the image long before they ever reach the essence, and most people never reach the essence at all. They stop at the surface because the surface satisfies their need for a quick conclusion. A strong man uses this human laziness as leverage. He controls what people see the moment he enters a room. He chooses what to reveal and what to withhold. He crafts subtle signals that guide others' interpretations without forcing them. He knows that the mind is eager to fill gaps, and the one who controls the gaps controls the narrative. Consider reputation. Reputation is not built on truth. It is built on repeated perceptions, moments, gestures, impressions. A small display of competence can create a reputation for mastery. A single act of calm in crisis can brand you as unshakable. A pattern of emotional restraint can make you appear wise even if you are simply quiet. Reputation is perception solidified over time, and once perception becomes reputation, it becomes reality in the eyes of the world. Now look at modern life. In workplaces, the most influential are rarely the most capable. They are the ones who project stability, certainty, and inevitability. They speak with controlled pace. They hold eye contact a second longer than others. They resist rushing. They don't defend themselves out of insecurity. Their behavior molds how people interpret them, and those interpretations slowly become fact, unquestioned, untested, unchallenged. That is perception control at its finest. In relationships, the person who controls perception sets the emotional frame. If you appear independent, calm, and internally anchored, the other person begins orbiting that stability. They interpret your silence as depth, your restraint as selectivity, your priorities as authority. You didn't state any of this. They concluded it on their own, which makes their conclusion far more powerful. When someone believes they've figured you out, they cling to their own interpretation because it feels self-authored. You guided their perception without a single direct command. Weak men try to correct every misunderstanding. Strong men understand that being misinterpreted is often the most effective form of influence, not because deception is noble, but because clarity is overrated. People do not fear what is clear. They fear what they cannot fully grasp, and fear is a form of respect. When you control perception, you don't chase validation. Validation comes to you. You don't explain your worth. Others assume it. You don't advertise your strength. They feel it in the way you carry yourself. You don't announce your boundaries. People sense them and adjust. You don't fight to be seen. You allow the mystery of your presence to create its own gravity. But perception control requires discipline. It requires resisting the impulse to defend yourself, resisting the urge to overshare, resisting the need to clarify. You let other people paint the picture with the limited information you've given them, and you choose those pieces deliberately. A measured response here, a subtle pause there, a controlled facial expression at the right moment. The world reads your signals more than your words, and your signals shape the story. The strongest perception is one others create for you. When you appear confident, people treat you as confident. When you appear unaffected, they treat you as strong. When you appear certain, they follow. These perceptions become habits in their minds, and those habits turn into belief. Control perception, and you control expectation. Control expectation, and you control behavior. Control behavior, and you control the dynamic. This is why strong men never fight for truth. Truth is optional. Perception is inevitable. And the one who guides the inevitable holds the throne. Keeping your emotional temperature cold is not about pretending you don't feel. It's about refusing to let anyone access what you feel. Because the moment someone can read your emotional temperature, they know exactly where to press, where to pull, and where to break you. Most men are defeated not by superior strength, but by predictable reactions. Anger exposes their limits. Excitement exposes their desires. Fear exposes their weaknesses. Emotional heat reveals the entire blueprint of their psychology. A cold man reveals nothing. His silence becomes ice, and his stillness becomes a shield. When you stay cold, you take away the enemy's map. They no longer know what affects you, what motivates you, what discourages you, or what triggers you. They cannot gauge whether you are winning or losing, whether you are wounded or indifferent. They are left in the dark, and people fear the dark more than they fear pain. A man with a cold emotional temperature is unreadable, and unreadable men become untouchable. Others tiptoe around what they cannot predict. Most people rely on emotional feedback to navigate the world. They test reactions. They poke to see what moves you. They make comments to see what rattles you. They use silence to see what you fear. They throw bait to see what you chase. Every interaction is a diagnostic. They are measuring you, and every visible emotional change, even small, gives them data. When you stay cold, you give them nothing. You starve their attempts. You make every tactic fail. Eventually, they stop trying because trying becomes exhausting and unrewarding. This is how emotional coldness becomes psychological armor. Consider conflict. A heated man becomes irrational. His words betray him. His breathing betrays him. His tone betrays him. The moment he raises his voice, he hands over control. Strong men remain calm, not because they are saints, but because anger is a currency they refuse to spend. The man who can remain still in the middle of a storm becomes the one others depend on or fear. A calm opponent is terrifying because it suggests preparation, certainty, or hidden power. Anger is loud and impulsive. Calm is deliberate and dangerous. Or look at relationships. Emotional heat creates imbalance. If you appear too excited, you come off needy. If you appear too hurt, you become manipulable. If you appear too eager, you become the one who chases. But coldness creates gravity. It slows the dynamic. People who want your attention begin working for it. People who seek your reaction push harder until they exhaust themselves. Emotional coldness turns the dynamic in your favor because it forces the other person to escalate while you remain grounded. The one who remains grounded controls the pace, the tone, and the trajectory of the interaction. In negotiation, emotional heat is death. Anxiety increases your price. Fear shortens your patience. Enthusiasm lowers your standards. But emotional coldness confuses the other side. They cannot tell if you're satisfied or indifferent, winning or losing, flexible or immovable. They end up negotiating with themselves, adjusting terms without any input from you. The colder you remain, the more pressure they feel to fill the silence with concessions. Emotional neutrality is not just a shield, it's leverage. Even socially, cold emotional temperature shapes perception. People interpret your calmness as confidence, your restraint as self-control, your neutrality as strength. They assume depth because they cannot detect chaos. They assign dignity to you because your behavior carries no desperation. This is the paradox. The less emotion you show, the more meaning people assign to your presence, and meaning is a form of power. But emotional coldness does not mean emotional absence. It means emotional discipline. It means you regulate your inner world with the same precision you regulate your outer world. You feel everything, but you reveal nothing. You respond only after thinking, not reacting. You choose the moment carefully, strategically. When you do express emotion, it becomes impactful instead of habitual. This is why truly powerful men can lose their temper once, and it speaks louder than the man who loses it every day. Coldness makes your emotions valuable. Warmth makes them cheap. This discipline requires patience. You must train yourself to pause before reacting, to breathe when insulted, to observe when provoked, to delay expression long enough for the other person to reveal their hand first. Most confrontations solve themselves if you remain cold long enough. Most provocations melt if you refuse to feed them with heat. Most emotional battles can be won without battle. You just let the opponent burn themselves out while you stay untouched. A cold emotional temperature is not stoicism. It is strategy. It is the deliberate choice to remain unshaken in a world addicted to reaction. And once people learn they cannot trigger you, they stop trying to control you. And when they stop trying to control you, you quietly gain control over them. Some misunderstandings are not accidents, they are opportunities. Weak men panic the moment they realize someone has gotten the wrong idea about them. They rush to correct it, to defend themselves, to clear the air. They fear being judged, misread, or mislabeled. But in their desperation to fix the misunderstanding, they expose their true motivations. They reveal their hunger to be liked, their desire to be understood, their need for validation. And the moment someone sees that need, your power dissolves. Because nothing makes you smaller than the urge to justify yourself. Strong men understand something colder. A misunderstanding is often more useful than the truth. People rarely punish the lie they invented themselves. They punish the truth that threatens their comfort. If someone misreads you and it benefits your position, your reputation, your leverage, or your mystique, you let it stand. You let them believe what they want to believe. Their assumption becomes the shield you never had to raise. Most people do not seek truth. They seek confirmation of their biases. If someone has already created a version of you in their head, fighting that version is pointless, and it's unnecessary. People cling to their interpretations like possessions. They will protect their belief about you, even when it contradicts reality. That makes misunderstanding a powerful tool, because it is self-maintaining. You don't need to reinforce it. They reinforce it for you. Look at social dynamics. If someone thinks you are wiser than you are because you speak less, correcting them only lowers your influence. Their misinterpretation gives you space. It makes them approach you carefully. It makes them weigh their words around you. If someone misreads your calm as confidence, your silence as depth, your distance as selectivity, correcting that destroys the advantage. Their perception creates respect you didn't have to earn. You simply let it breathe. In professional settings, a misunderstanding can build authority. If a team thinks you have more connections, more capabilities, or more insight than you truly do, you use that perception to set expectations. You don't lie, you don't fabricate. You simply don't dismantle what they constructed on their own. Their belief becomes your leverage. Their assumption becomes your armor. Their fear of being wrong keeps them aligned with you. But the real power of letting misunderstandings stand lies in what it does to the dynamic. The other person begins operating around their version of you, not the real you. They reveal their intentions to the image they believe exists, not the man in front of them. They show respect, caution, admiration, or fear to the silhouette they created. That gives you perfect visibility. You see everything. They see nothing. The moment you correct their misunderstanding, you give up that vantage point. You step onto their level. You strip away the fog that protects your intentions. In relationships, misunderstandings can be shields. If someone believes you are less emotionally invested than you actually are, the dynamic stays balanced. They don't take advantage. They don't overstep. They don't assume control. Your quietness becomes a boundary you never had to verbalize. The moment you rush to clarify your feelings, the dynamic shifts, often permanently. Their clarity becomes your vulnerability. The misunderstanding was the balance. The correction is the collapse. This doesn't mean letting harmful lies spread. It means understanding which conclusions empower you and which expose you. You do not allow rumors that damage your freedom or safety, but you do allow the interpretations that enhance your influence. You allow the ones that give you room to maneuver. You allow the ones that make people step around you instead of through you. Letting misunderstandings stand is not passivity. It is selective restraint. It is the discipline to hold your tongue when your ego wants to speak. It is the wisdom to recognize that people's assumptions are often more flattering than your explanations. Humans are simple. They believe what fits their narrative, and narratives are easier to guide than facts. The key is this: you must remain unreadable without appearing evasive. You don't hide. You don't run. You simply allow silence to be the filter. People ask questions. You answer only what is necessary. You leave the rest in shadow. They fill the shadow with their own imagination. Imagination elevates you. Explanation diminishes you. A misunderstanding that works in your favor is a gift. A misunderstanding that protects you is a fortress. A misunderstanding that creates curiosity is a crown. Correcting every mistaken assumption is the habit of insecure men. Letting useful misunderstandings stand is the strategy of powerful ones. Appearing stable is not about having everything under control. It's about projecting an atmosphere that suggests you cannot be easily moved. Most men crumble the moment life pushes them. Their voice trembles, their decisions wobble, their emotions spill, their posture collapses, and in that instant, the world reads them, not through their words, but through the cracks in their presence. A man who appears unstable invites pressure. The world leans on whatever looks like it might break. A man who appears stable, even when uncertain, controls the entire interaction. People slow down around him. They measure their words. They hesitate before challenging him. They assume there is depth behind his stillness. They assume he has a plan. They assume he knows something they don't. Stability becomes a signal of hidden power, and in any room filled with uncertainty, the one who emits the least chaos becomes the natural center. Human beings are wired to look for anchors. When situations become unpredictable, people search for someone who isn't swayed. They gravitate toward the one whose presence stays level. That's why appearing stable is more important than being stable. Actual certainty is rare and fragile, but the signs of certainty, stillness, patience, measured responses, are easy to project if you discipline yourself. It is an illusion anyone can cultivate, but only a few do. Consider leadership. The best leaders are not the ones who always know the right answer. They're the ones who don't collapse while finding it. Their calmness gives everyone else permission to relax. Their steadiness creates structure. Even when they are internally uncertain, they do not broadcast it. Because once doubt becomes visible, it spreads. Panic is contagious, but so is composure. The appearance of stability doesn't just protect you, it stabilizes others, which increases your authority even further. Think about negotiations. If you visibly worry about losing the deal, the other side pushes harder. If you look impatient, they drag out the conversation. If you look eager, they lower their offer. The entire process becomes a psychological chess match. The man who appears stable wins because he communicates one thing without speaking. I cannot be rushed, swayed, or cornered. Even if he's improvising, his demeanor tells a different story, and people believe demeanor over fact every single time. In relationships, appearing stable gives you emotional gravity. A partner tests you to see if you bend to their moods. If you react wildly, the dynamic becomes chaotic. If you chase reassurance, you become predictable. But when you remain steady, not cold, not distant, but grounded, the relationship orients itself around your center. Your presence becomes the quiet authority. The more stable you appear, the more the dynamic naturally organizes itself around your pace instead of theirs. Stability also creates mystique. People try to decode you. They wonder why you're not worried, why you're not rushing, why you're not overreacting like everyone else. They start imagining hidden strengths, skills, strategies, experiences that you may or may not have. They extend credit to you that they would never extend if you exposed your uncertainty. They fill the silence with assumptions, and their assumptions often elevate you. Weak men expose every fluctuation of their inner world. Their emotions leak through their eyes, their voice, their posture. When uncertain, they ramble. When stressed, they panic. When challenged, they wobble. They believe the only way to avoid being misunderstood is to show everything. But people don't respect transparency when it's driven by fear. They respect composure, born from discipline. Appearing stable requires one fundamental skill, the ability to pause, to delay your reaction, to hold yourself still long enough for the moment to reveal what it's trying to do. When something unexpected happens, a confrontation, a disappointment, a challenge, you step back internally and observe your impulses without acting on them. This creates a gap between the stimulus and your response, and that gap is what creates the illusion of certainty. The man who pauses looks like he's choosing, not reacting, and choosing is the essence of control. You don't need a plan to appear stable. You just need the refusal to show panic. You don't need total confidence. You just need controlled posture. You don't need perfect clarity. You just need steady tone. People cannot see inside you. They only see the signals your body broadcasts. And if those signals are calm, grounded, and consistent, they will assume strength. The world is full of chaos. Most people are drowning in it. When you appear stable, you become the one thing they can lean on, or the one thing they fear disrupting. Both positions are power. A stable appearance becomes a psychological shield. A stable appearance becomes unspoken authority. A stable appearance becomes the foundation others unconsciously obey. Never forget, people follow what they think will not break. If you learn to appear unbreakable, you will never walk without influence. Limiting your reactions is not about being detached from life. It's about refusing to let the world dictate your movements. Most men react to everything: words, glances, tone shifts, delays, disrespect, praise, attention, absence. Their emotions sit on the surface, waiting to be triggered. They have no filter, no pause, no inner governor. Every stimulus pulls a response out of them. And because of this, everyone around them learns exactly how to control them. When your reactions are predictable, you are controllable. When your reactions are immediate, you are transparent. When your reactions are emotional, you are weak. The man who limits his reactions becomes dangerous because he becomes unreadable. People cannot tell whether he's impressed, offended, amused, or bored. They cannot track his inner temperature. They cannot adjust to him. They cannot adjust to him. They cannot anticipate his decisions. And when they cannot anticipate you, they cannot manipulate you. Most people don't want your real self. They want access to your buttons. They look for patterns. They study what makes you angry, what makes you insecure, what makes you overextend. They examine your tone, your posture, your haste. They test until they find a crack, and once they find it, they press it again and again. Limiting your reactions denies them the blueprint. Your silence becomes a locked door they cannot pick. Think of conversations. A reactive man jumps in to defend himself, clarify himself, prove himself. He argues with every slight. He interrupts every interpretation. He exposes his insecurities with every nervous explanation. But a man who limits his reactions says less. He listens. He watches. His face doesn't shift. His tone doesn't spike. His silence forces others to continue talking, and talking is where most people reveal their real intentions. Reaction destroys information. Stillness pulls it out. In conflict, the reactive man loses before the argument even begins. He takes the bait. He responds emotionally. He lets the opponent set the frame. Every raised voice, every quick comeback, every defensive explanation tells the other person exactly how to handle him. But the man who limits his reactions disrupts the entire script. His calmness confuses the aggressor. They expect a fight. They expect to flinch. Instead, they meet a wall, a quiet, unwavering wall that makes them question their own position. When someone cannot move you, They lose confidence in attacking you. Your lack of reaction becomes the victory. In relationships, the reactive man becomes a puppet. A slight change in tone from his partner, and he spirals. A moment of distance, and he panics. A hint of attention, and he becomes overly eager. His entire emotional rhythm is controlled externally. But when you limit your reactions, the dynamic reverses. Your steadiness forces the other person to stabilize their own behavior. They can no longer predict your mood, so they become more cautious with theirs. They try not to trigger what they cannot read. Your stillness becomes the gravitational center of the relationship. In social settings, a man who reacts too easily is interpreted as insecure, laugh too fast, and you look eager for acceptance. Get offended too easily, and you look fragile. Celebrate too loudly, and you look desperate for validation. Even positive reactions reveal too much. But when you limit your reactions, your presence sharpens. People start to wonder what you're thinking. They notice the small cues, the slight nods, the brief smiles, the quiet acknowledgements, because you don't give them often. Scarcity creates value. Your reactions become valuable because they are rare. But limiting reactions is not suppression. It is selection. You don't lock your emotions away. You simply choose when to reveal them. You control the timing. You control the quantity. You control the delivery. You speak when it matters, not when you feel provoked. You show emotion when it benefits the moment, not when the moment pulls it out of you. This is discipline disguised as mystery. Every reaction you give must serve a purpose. Every moment of stillness must create pressure. Every silence must make them second-guess their approach. To limit your reactions, you must train your first impulse, the urge to answer, defend, correct, retaliate. Let the moment pass through you before you respond. Let the emotions rise without letting them surface. Let the other person show themselves fully while you remain immovable. The longer you wait, the more strategic your words become. The less you react, the more others react to you. People behave differently around a man who cannot be pushed. They grow careful, they grow respectful, they grow uncertain. And uncertainty is the seed of submission. Humans fear what they cannot predict. If you want power, cultivate that fear. A man who limits his reactions is not passive, he is in control. He is not cold, he is calculating. He is not detached, he is disciplined. And when your behavior can no longer be controlled from the outside, the world begins adjusting itself to you. That is the quiet beginning of dominance. Controlling presence is far more powerful than controlling opinions. Opinions are unstable. They shift with emotion, gossip, insecurity, and the collective noise of the crowd. Trying to change what people think is a waste of strength. You argue, you plead, you defend, you justify, and in the end, you stand smaller for having tried. But presence bypasses opinion entirely. People don't need to agree with you to feel your weight. They don't need to like you to respect you. They don't even need to understand you to be influenced by you. Presence is the silent field of gravity a man carries around him, and gravity does not negotiate. It pulls, it bends, it rearranges everything in its range without asking permission. Most men never develop presence because they chase the wrong target approval. They want to be seen the right way. They want everyone to like them, understand them, validate them. But approval lowers presence. It makes you appear needy, eager, lightweight. A man who wants to be understood is already beneath the one who doesn't care. Because the truth is brutal, the moment you try to influence opinions directly, you position yourself as someone who needs the crowd, someone who must explain himself, someone beneath the judgment of others. Presence is the opposite. Presence says, judge me if you want. I remain unmoved. Presence says, your thoughts about me do not alter my structure. Presence says, I do not chase image, I generate atmosphere. When you control presence, you don't push people, you pull them. You don't persuade them, you unsettle them. You don't convince them, you make them feel your existence in the room, in the conversation, in the silence between your thoughts. People react to presence instinctively, long before they react to logic. Look at any situation where true influence is at play. It's never the loudest man who sets the tone. It's the one whose demeanor anchors the space. The one who speaks sparsely, but with weight. The one whose posture remains calm while others fidget. The one who looks but doesn't seek. The one who listens without giving away his inner calculations. Presence is built through tension, not words, through restraint, not explanation, through self-possession, not self-expression. In a meeting, a man with strong presence doesn't need to dominate the conversation. His quiet attention forces others to sharpen their ideas. People stumble when they speak to him because they feel observed, they feel measured, they feel the pressure of his silence. His presence elevates the room because everyone senses that he is not easily impressed, not easily swayed, not easily moved. In relationships, presence is the difference between being desired and being used. A man with presence doesn't get dragged into emotional storms. He doesn't negotiate his self-worth. He doesn't collapse when challenged. His steadiness forces the other person to regulate themselves. His calmness becomes the emotional center, a gravitational force that sets the rhythm of the connection. Even love bends toward presence, because love, like fear, seeks an anchor. Socially, presence separates the forgettable from the unforgettable. Men without presence blend into the noise. They speak too much, laugh too loudly, gesture too wildly. They try to create impact with effort. Presence creates impact without effort. You walk into a room differently. You sit differently. You pause differently. You inhabit your own body without rushing. You own your space without defending it. People feel this long before they consciously recognize it. It's not charisma. Charisma is performance. Presence is density. To develop presence, you must eliminate two things: the need to prove yourself and the need to be understood. When those needs die, your presence grows heavier, because the world senses what you no longer chase. You become a man who cannot be baited, a man who cannot be guilt-tripped, a man who cannot be pulled into petty emotions, a man who does not advertise his strength because he doesn't need to. His presence speaks for him. You control your pace, not theirs. You control your tone, not theirs. You control your stillness, not their chaos. And in doing so, you quietly dictate the entire dynamic. When you control presence, you don't reshape opinions one by one. You reshape the atmosphere in which opinions form. People think differently around you because they feel differently around you. They become more cautious, more respectful, more restrained. They weigh their words. They adjust their posture. They alter their tone. They moderate their behavior. Your presence becomes the silent frame that guides the entire interaction. Influence built on opinion is fragile. Influence built on presence is unbreakable, because opinions can be argued. Presence cannot. When a man controls presence, he controls the room. And when he controls the room, he doesn't need to control anything else. In the end, power is quiet. It is not the roar of a king, but the calm of a man who cannot be read. It is not in the force of your actions, but the weight of your presence. It is not in the truth you live, but in the illusion others accept. Smart men do not chase influence. They shape the perception that makes influence inevitable. Remember this: most people look with their fears, not their eyes. With their insecurities, not their logic. with their desperation, not their clarity. If you learn to control their lens, you never need to control them directly. Power moves through shadows, and the man who understands perception walks with an invisible crown. The final truth is simple. A controlled image is a controlled world. Let others guess who you are. Let their imagination do the work, and rule the story they tell themselves. Because in the end, perception is the throne, and the quiet man sits on it.